obviously a very well hard fought victory more than anything. Anybody, like I said, that thought that wasn't going to be a battle had not probably done their homework. And the score can be a little bit misleading, to be honest with you. It looks really good at the end of the game, but the reality is that was a four-quarter game that was a real battle. Defensively, I give hats off to Coach Freeman and all those guys and the guys that played. Man, I mean they played their butts off. They played hard. They played physical. They played four quarters. A lot of new different things were thrown at them, and they did an unbelievable job. Not being perfect, but finding a way to make sure that our guys could play fast. Offensively, I think we did what we had to do. It was tough at times, and started off a little bit obviously rocky with the turnover for a touchdown, but ultimately, especially in the second half, we did what we had to do. And sometimes you hamstring those guys, and based on how the game's going, but more than anything, they did what we needed to do. And then special teams wise, we came up with some really big plays, not just the block punt. Those guys are well coached and did a great job even on their punt block team. Have put some pressure and held us up some, and the incredible efforts our guys gave. I think that you can really see it's all three phases of the game it's going to take to beat a really good service academy, and Army is that. So that's about it.
All right, thank you, Coach. Justin, why don't you lead us off?
Coach, I realize scheme and game plan, especially against a triple option, is big, but I have to imagine withstanding that attack and maintaining that discipline for four quarters is just as difficult. Is there something you guys did to prepare them for that, especially how big and physical Army is, to basically not get beat down after a quarter or two?
Well, I think we did a good. I would say we did a good job rotating. I think the guys up front probably were the ones that rotated a little bit more. I think that's where you see sometimes that it wasn't a lopsided time of possession. Even when we played Navy before, they didn't have a ton of plays, but I still think that by nature the triple option ends up, time of possession is heavily in favor of them. And sometimes you'd say, well, you didn't do what you need to do offensively, and then you start to look back at it and say you did the things you probably had to do to win. And sometimes that is, balancing the clock out and giving your defense an opportunity, and not just to make adjustments, but be able to not be out there for 40 minutes. In the first game, defensively, we were out there, for a long time, much more than we were in game two. So I think that the balance of that, playing enough guys, and then obviously the prep work. I think, the scout guys that we had and the ability for us to, run as many plays at them as we did, and we really did that in one of those weeks before Austin Peay. We did a bunch of triple option stuff. So I think that all in all kind of gave us an opportunity to be able to sustain something.
Coach, what are your thoughts so far on being able to establish the run inside? And is there anything on tape that you see that maybe needs to click a little better to get that going?
Well, I think you got to be a little bit more patient with it. I think that we got to continue to work it and do it. We always say we want to be able to get the ball on the perimeter, with some of the athletes we have and the things like that. But I still think our bread and butter is being able to, work the things inside, establishing the dominance up front. And I think we got to get a little bit more back to that. I think we got to have a little bit more opportunities to do it. I think that maybe sometimes you want to throw the ball down the field and you want to RPO, and unfortunately a few of those inside runs that maybe, getting you those 4 and 5 yards and setting a tone for some things are pulled and thrown. Those ones happen to be tipped in the game, but I think you're going to get a few more. You're going to establish a little bit more dominance. You're establish a little bit more of that run. I just think we got to be a little bit more committed to it.
Coach, I'm kind of on that topic. There were games last year where it felt like, with Mike, it was maybe slow moving in the beginning, and then late in the game he would break off a couple big ones. Is that tougher to do with the rotation? I would think the fresh legs would be better, but I'm sure there's some kind of balance in there.
Yeah, there is, and I don't know what the exact is. I think that's what we're talking about. I talk about it a lot in the wide receiver room, in the sense that we're throughout all camp, you're trying to figure out what's going to be the best combination. We do a really good job of that offensive line wise of getting into camp and saying, okay, what's going to be the rotation? How are we going to do this? Who's going to be the guys we're going to get the gel together? Out there at wide receivers, you had a lot of guys in and out, new guys, quarantine, things that happened throughout camp. So I think those guys are gelling. And I think it's the same thing at the tailback position. We've got 4 guys we really like. And sometimes that's the toughest thing because it's hard to get a guy going. It's hard to get a guy, really kind of in the mode. And you saw Mike break off some of those things late in some games last year, but it might have been on carry 22, 23, and 24. So I think we're trying to figure out what that balance is. There's a balance to being fresh. There's a balance to riding a horse that's hot. And right now, I think we're still young and trying to figure out what that balance is.
Two-part question. Jarrell White is a guy who was really fighting for a consistent role last year and has done that this year. First, what were some of the ways where you were trying to get him on the field last year? And two, what do you like about the role that he settled into this year?
Well, last year we were in a good position with him. Him and Beavers were kind of rolling. So I think both of them pretty much early in the year played equal time. And I think it really helped us later in the year because I think Jarrell was a lot fresher. I think we were able to still continue to roll. And, if somebody got dinged up or paired, we could obviously move Beavers around. The year before with Jarrell, I think we had to play him some more inside, which is just not a natural position for him. So I think we've got him in a good spot. I think last year was really we had the ability to mix it, to not have a guy play 65, 70 snaps, which at times guys would say, well, I want to play all the snaps. I know, but I think in the long run, what's best for all of us is the ability to play more than one guy at some of those positions. This year, I think that, obviously last week is different because it's a different defense and you're playing different things. But he's obviously picked up right where he's left off. He is a very, very good football player that has the ability to make a lot of plays. And not just big plays, but be consistent in the plays that he's making. And I think that's what we're able to see the more he's played in week 1 and obviously as much as he played in week 2.
And then when he had one of his best games of his career against Memphis in the conference championship game, do you feel like that helped people for him into the season?
Yeah, I think that the connection of all those guys kind of getting good together, I think that's the unique thing. We're a little bit different defensively. We have some flexibility to what we do, and I think it's, you can see that later in the year. I think that you see that going into year 2 and 3, understanding really what we're doing. I think that helps, that our guys got to be able to play. People don't realize how important that is. We talk about it with offensive line for the first 3 years, saying, hey, we got to get gelled. We got to figure out who those guys are going to be. It's like that in every position. And we talk about it, the wide receivers, talking about it, the running back spot. There's no difference to the linebacker spot that, when you're playing and giving guys some freedoms, to have Jarrell being able to play off a little bit of what Majay Sanders does, those guys with a good connection. I know it's not like a quarterback and wide receiver. Everybody doesn't realize it because, there's a ball that takes them there. But the two of those guys have to have the ability in what we do to be able to play off each other.
Coach, I'm curious, with South Florida having to cancel their game last week due to COVID concerns, is there any concern on your part that this game will even happen? Have you got any update from them that they're going to play?
No, I don't have any concerns. That's out of my control. So that was the last thing that I would spend a whole lot of time thinking about or worrying about. We got to take care of what we can control. I have not gotten any updates. I was not concerned as of Sunday when we obviously shifted gears and went into the South Florida mode. I'm sure if there's something to be updated on that they would give it to me, but I don't think it would change how we prepare and what we're doing for a Tuesday and for a Tuesday practice.
Coach, on your rewatch, did anything jump out about Dez's performance and some of those early struggles, particularly on deep balls?
Well, I don't. The deep balls are easier to come back from. I know we didn't take a bunch of shots after maybe the third one. Where we didn't hit them. We obviously the first one to Michael, then a little bit of the deep dig that got was a little bit behind him and tipped and then intercepted, and then the one to Jordan Jones, which was off. I don't think those rattle a quarterback. I don't think those get in a quarterback's head. I think it's a little bit more the tip balls to the line of scrimmage. I think a couple of the RPOs go a lot further than a missed down the field throw. I know it looks different to the people outside, but I think for the quarterback and the things that we're doing, just the confidence level, those ones have something to do with it, but I think the tip balls have every bit as much to do with it. And, in some ways it's a really good job on their part. They're a little bit more of a controlled rush team. They have some good length. I think they did a really good job at saying, hey, we're going to keep Dez in the pocket, and not thinking that they can probably get a ton of heat on him. They were going to try to, kind of condense it and get the hands up and try to tip balls, where I think, I've always said it before, disrupted passes are every bit as good as a sack. Nobody likes to say that. They don't get charted as well, but they're big because I think they have an effect on a quarterback at where he starts releasing the football from, and I think those affect deep balls even greater than, the wind of some sorts.
What has been your overall take on that wide receiver room? A lot of new faces and even more pushed into action with Alec out, but through 2 games, what's been your take on that room?
Well, I think they've got a lot of maturity. I think that you're going to see where the first even 2-3 years, you didn't have a great feeling that, like, hey, by week 3, 4, 5, 6, you're going to continue to see a growth. And I mean that just because I don't know that we had the maturity. We had some players, but the maturity to bring a lot of those guys along, in a unique year that, let's be honest, I mean, you could be rotating a lot of different guys, not just because of injuries, not just because of who's playing well, but with all the other things that could, knock a guy out for, a short amount of time. I feel good, like, hey, we are in a progression that's going to do nothing but continue to go up, no matter what, no matter who it is, whether it's Michael Young, whether it's Jordan Jones, whether it's Alec coming back. The better, they are, the more they're around, Dez and Ben and those guys, and understanding and getting a better feel for each other. I believe no matter what happens, the maturity in that room, the ability for those guys to play together, you're going to continue to see a growth every week.
How much does that help, do you think, Jadon, and having him come along? Because it looks like he's close to breaking out.
Well, I like to always say that coaching is really important, and don't get me wrong. And a coach has an incredible effect on especially young guys. But when you've got maturity within a room, when you've got a guy that you can look to and watch and see how it's done, and I don't just mean how you run a route, I mean how you prepare, how you work, how you study, how you compete within a meeting. I think that's the greatest thing for a young guy, and I feel like we've got that, much more of that in that wide receiver room, which is going to give Jaden a great opportunity. It's going to give a lot of those other young guys greater opportunities as well, because everybody's got to be prepared and ready to play.
Coach Pitts probably sacrificed the most in terms of playing time with some of the formation changes and stuff over the past couple of years. For him to come in this new scheme you guys had against Army and had the big forced fumble, is that one of those examples that you can then point to with the team when you talk about that unselfishness and him having to play less but then coming back and still having a big game?
It is, and that's why we say it's a long season. You got to find ways, and your seniors are so critical. And it's not just that they're the guys that are the starters, but they're the guys that got to have unique roles. And where Michael's been up and down with some of the different roles we've asked him to do. He's had a lot of injuries last year. He was back to what I believe Michael Pitts' greatest attribute is he plays really hard. He is when that ball snapped, he goes. And with the injuries and things like that, I think Mike maybe got in a little bit of a bad place. The defense switched up a little bit last year. He didn't have as much of a role. May have hurt him a bit, but as he come back into this thing, I think the thing we saw was what we originally had loved about Mike was his ability to play really hard. And we're going to continue to grow and figure out what those roles all are going to be. But that it was great to see him back and playing the game the way he had played it, even at the early of last year before he got dinged up and hurt a little bit.
Are you surprised through 2 games teams have challenged Ahmad Gardner as much as they have?
Well, last week is so unique. I don't know if they even knew who Ahmad Gardner was, to be honest with you. Don't tell Ahmad that, because he would lose his mind. What do you mean they don't know who I am? I don't know that they look at a whole lot at the corners and figure out how they're going to scheme up the corners. So I think even throwing the ball at Ahmad, I'm not sure that was in their scouting report that he's obviously done a really good job last year. But I think in general, I think that they're going to continue to take challenges, and I think there's nothing greater for Ahmad than to be challenged. So we'll see. I think we'll continue to see guys do that. Not that they don't think he's a good football player, but in some of those situations they want to be able to test and see if this guy's on his game like he was last year, and to see how much better he's gotten. So I would say the way we play a bit, that they're still going to find ways to continue to take challenges at Ahmad.
Coach, can you tell us about South Florida?
Well, it's kind of hard to say a whole lot. I mean, obviously they got 2 games. The Notre Dame game is it's almost a really not a very good depiction. They had some issues. Things happened really fast. They're down really early, really quick. With a couple balls snapped over the punter's head. But all I can tell you is in the 3 years that we've played them, one of them was no contest where they just beat the daylights out of us, and the other 2 were complete dogfights. And I know they're going to come in here with a chip on their shoulder like they did 2 years ago. We know they've got athletes. They outplayed us last year. We beat them, and we won the game, which is ultimately the goal. But there's no doubt that they outplayed us, and it wasn't just like they outplayed us on one side of the ball. I think they really, in a lot of ways, outplayed us on both sides of the ball. But we were, in the long run, a better team and found a way to win. So I don't know that they're going to change a whole lot, even though they have a different coaching staff. I think you're going to see a lot of the similar things from them, and just the way they play, the aggressiveness they play, with the attitude they play with.
Any more questions, guys? Justin?
I got one more. Coach, it was mentioned on the TV broadcast that Marcus Freeman and his family are staying in your house. Is that accurate?
I don't live there, so I don't know. You know what? I'm not there a whole lot, but there is a lot of noise in the basement. I don't go down there much, so I try to just steer clear of checking to see what's down in the basement. But there seems to be a few critters running around the house, and it seems to be a lot of noise in the basement. I'm not exactly sure why. My wife doesn't tell me everything. I've just kind of steered clear of going down there.
It's no carpools in the morning, right?
How big is your basement?
I don't know. I've never been down there. If my kids go down there, I'm surely not going down there. And if I hear noise down there, I don't go down there either. So, there's a nice little entrance from the garage that goes down there, so I don't even have to worry about it.
6 kids and 12 kids, there's just, in terms of food, there's probably no difference, I'm guessing.
When you come home at 9:30, you hope everybody's in bed. If you come home at 10:30, you know everybody's going to be in bed. If you do wake up on a Sunday because you just played a game, you do hear a lot more commotion, and I try to get out of the house before I figure out what it is, because then it might make me a little bit more worried.